Welcome, everyone. My name is Ken Hisco. I'm Government Relations Director for Pfizer, and I want to welcome you to a very special place at a very special time for our state and our country. We're proud of our site here in Groton and to the thousands of scientists who work here. It's my pleasure and my honor to welcome our state representatives and our state senators from the area who represent us so well in Hartford. We appreciate everyone coming out today, and also our Groton City and town mayors as well. And also we welcome, as always, our Governor Ned Lamont, who has been here several times and is such a great advocate for Pfizer, as well as for the life sciences industry in Connecticut. So thank you, Governor, for coming. And I'd also like to welcome, obviously, the members of the media as well. It's my pleasure to introduce the city mayor, Keith Hedrick. If you could please come up and make some remarks, and we'll get the press conference started.
Thank you. Thanks. Good morning and welcome to this event. This is a tremendous opportunity. Thank you, Pfizer, for inviting me to this event. I want to thank the governor for being here, and welcome to all the senators and representatives that are here today for the event that we have. The city of Groton and Groton in general has a great relationship with Pfizer, and today will be another example of the relationship, the partnership that we have with Pfizer, and it will solidify that this facility in Groton is the R&D Center of Excellence now and for years to come. So thank you for coming out, and with that, I will turn it over to Governor Lamont. Governor.
Well, thank you, Pfizer. Thank you, Keith. They gave me this mask. Science will win. Science will win. And I think I can take it off because we are somewhat distant here. I am so proud that Pfizer's right here in Connecticut in taking the lead on finding a possible solution to this COVID crisis. Pfizer's been here for a while, and they're not here on purpose. I mean, this is a state that was ranked fourth best in the country in innovation, fourth best in the country in innovation by Bloomberg, fourth best in the country because of what we do in life sciences and bioscience, and what Pfizer is doing right here and right now. And you're reminded by this amazing announcement how important Pfizer and the rest of our life sciences are going forward. John was just giving me the rundown. Look, Pfizer is one of the lead horses in this race right now. There may be several winners. We need several winners. And Pfizer is not just developing the vaccine, going through the protocols, going through the testing, hoping that we're going to have something that's ready for final FDA approval as early as October, in time. This is a warp speed, and it's remarkable what they've been able to do. And it's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We still, along the way, have to make sure we're following all the protocols that make Connecticut one of the best in the country in terms of a low infection rate. But it gives us hope, and it gives us hope that science is going to lead us the way past this, as we have in so many other cases. I want to say, on a personal note, look, I've been pretty tough on the federal government, and I thought their response to PPE and masks and gowns and even testing was discombobulated, and leaving it all up to the states. And we took the lead on this, and the states, worked through different success rates depending on where you were. But a little credit where credit's due. I think the federal government's been really proactive and thoughtful as regards what we're doing with life sciences, what we're trying to do with therapeutics, what we're trying to do with vaccines. They've taken the lead. They put in place the incentives. They've offered that they're going to be there to make the purchase as soon as things are done. We are going to have a national stockpile. And maybe, before the end of this year, we're going to have billions of doses that we're able to do. They've worked in close partnership with academia and the major life sciences and pharma companies, including Pfizer, which I think gives us a running head start in terms of where we would be otherwise. John, I have a special thanks to Pfizer, though, because not only did you take the lead on developing a vaccine that has the best chance of any in the country of working, and we're going to know that sooner rather than later, but you're also putting your money where your mouth is. And I come out of the business world, and there's a lot of risk. And you can say, let's wait, let's see how the clinical trials go, let's wait and see what the FDA approval process looks like. Then we'll start manufacturing, and maybe sometime next year we'll be able to have the doses we need to keep people safe. And that's not the way Pfizer did it. Pfizer's taken a fair amount of risk, and they're rolling the dice, and they're ramping up manufacturing right now, creating the doses. And they're doing that because it's the right thing to do. And they're doing that because if we can get this through the FDA approval process, it's going to be on an expedited basis, not a rushed, but an expedited basis, so that we go through all the testing, all the protocols. When we get something released, we know it's effective, and we know that it's safe, and we know that Pfizer is going to have the capacity we need to get those vaccines out where we need it. We were just talking, we're going to do everything we can at the state level when that time comes, working with the pharmacies, making sure they have all the capability they need to be able to get you the vaccines fast and efficiently as possible. I just want to say, John, in introducing you and the rest of the Pfizer team, on behalf of our amazing delegation here, I'm so proud of what you've been able to do. This has been a cloud hanging over our country for quite some time, our world, in a sense that these pandemics, we thought we had them in control, and then it flares up again. And it just gives us a great sense of hope that working with Pfizer, working with the life sciences, you working down in New Haven, you've got that partnership there, you've got Yale New Haven Hospital nearby, able to do testing on the therapeutics. We are going to get through this. We're going to get through it together with an amazing partnership with companies like Pfizer. I'm proud you guys are working here. It's an amazing place to be. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you could join us today. Governor and elected officials, special invitation to you. I'd like to start with expressing gratitude because you helped us keep this place open. We were essential personnel working on COVID, but also all the other maladies that afflict mankind, humankind, that we try to treat. Kept the streets open, so thank you for that. We couldn't have done what we're doing without that support. We deliver breakthroughs that change patients' lives. That's a tagline for the company. That's what we do, very much on display with the work for the pandemic. We'll talk more about that. We're committed to that response. As the governor mentioned, huge manufacturing investment occurring at risk. The science that's going on here and at other sites around the world that Pfizer owns, where R&D flourishes, together we hope to really change the course of this pandemic. We believe that science will win. You're seeing that on the masks. We think science will beat the pandemic. We're proud to be a part of that. We're also humbled to be on the front lines. It's been scientists working day and night, very hard. It's all the support staff that have also allowed the scientists to do this work. This facility had to be kept open. We've engineered new ways of working. You see markings about staying 6 feet away, touchless entry, other innovations that are going to help us keep this place open and keep our work going. I'd like to say a few things about the vaccine. You've been hearing it in the news. I'm going to stick more to the science. That's what we do here. We're a science, we're an R&D site. We received fast track status last week for the vaccine. You may have heard that. Well, what does that mean? Well, when a sponsor receives that, it puts you in a position to really interact seamlessly with health authorities in the United States. That helps you to go fast. You don't sit and write a 100-page document, send it for review, wait 45 days, and hear the outcome. You can be on the telephone with the health authorities. You can get reviews in real time. You can get advice about study design, endpoints in the study. So all of those things contribute to a really safe and high-quality product and allow you to get there in a much shorter period of time. We've got this great partnership with BioNTech that has allowed Pfizer to be a major player here. BioNTech has this mRNA platform technology originally and probably will be used for the yearly flu virus, where in a very short period of time you can get the construct, develop the virus, treatment, vaccine that's useful for that same flu year. So when the pandemic came along, BioNTech had the platform. Pfizer's been producing large-scale vaccine for many years. It's a match made in heaven. Preliminary data from the study shows a good immune response from patients vaccinated, and we plan to start the large-scale clinical trial before the end of July, involving 20 to 30,000 patients. As I discussed with the governor, it's public knowledge that we hope to complete this trial and have a regulatory submission by October. And remember, we're making the vaccine at risk, the product, so that could be available certainly before the end of the year. Amazing stuff. Also, not to be overlooked, our approach is taken when patients are already infected with the virus and need treatment. So in the third quarter of this year, we hope to get into the hospital setting with a drug that is given intravenously to patients hospitalized with COVID. Additionally, there are studies ongoing now in the United States and Europe with some of our immunomodulators that can help those patients who've beaten the infection, but the host immune response is exuberant and excessive and at risk to their livelihood. And finally, I'd like to just comment on some of the activities that the people working right on this campus have done. For us at Pfizer, discovering and developing new treatments, those breakthroughs that change patients' lives, we collaborate among our sites. This site, as the mayor indicated, is quite a center of excellence and has some expertise, some capabilities here that are not replicated anywhere else in Pfizer. And some of those being applied as we speak and around the clock to the vaccine are studies for safety, both preclinical and clinical. All the regulatory filings, the communications, the dossiers that need to be put together, those things come from this site. An interesting thing about this new vaccine approach is that the mRNA is enclosed in a lipid nanoparticle. So you can imagine the complexity of that. And on this site, we are actively looking at engineering that particle, analyses for it that will allow the clinical trials as well as the manufacturing to occur. Global clinical supply also providing additional components to the vaccine. Procurement helps us to get what we need. And some of that sourcing has been complicated during the pandemic with supply chain interruptions. And finally, a shout out to Global Workplace Solutions. These are the people who help us run the buildings, keep us socially distanced, provide the touchless entry, and all of those things that are keeping us going. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. It's great to have you here. And I think next we go to questions. And Governor, that means you're back up here as well. Okay, we have a questioner. Yes.
I wonder if the speed at which this is happening means some of the usual safety or regulatory steps that would be taken with the vaccine would be skipped. Is this safe for people sitting at home who hear warp speed?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Of course, it's a very timely question as well. The short answer is we just do not compromise safety. And we can move faster working with the regulatory agencies more precisely designing studies. That helps us get to the efficacy readout faster. Safety is just not compromised. So feel very confident about that. It will require the actual large-scale studies themselves to see how well the vaccine works and whether there are smaller safety signals that need to be put into context. But we're very optimistic about that. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul Hughes from the Republican American. What happens after October if everything goes as planned with the trials? What are the next steps after?
Sure. The question is what happens if we are successful to have a regulatory filing in October, what happens after that? A standard review time for an expedited product is a 6-month review with the agency being US FDA. They've clearly indicated a desire on behalf of the American people to conduct those types of reviews as quickly as possible. So a best case scenario would be a review of the package. It's found to be acceptable, approval before the end of the year. And remember, we are manufacturing at risk, so the vaccine should be there. And just another comment is, this is research and development. We are optimistic. We are hopeful. Things can go wrong that can slow a project. So those are optimistic dates.
Just to follow up, how long after that will vaccines actually be available to be, injected in people's arms, and how long do you think that will take?
Yeah, I think it will be soon, i.e. before the end of the year. I can't be more precise than that. I know there's a curiosity for that, but I can't provide it.
Good morning. My name is Tony Terzi from Fox 61. Just wondering if the vaccine will actually be distributed from this site or where that would happen. Would it be various sites?
Good question. This will not be a manufacturing site. We also don't really warehouse here, so unlikely that we would distribute from this site. Interestingly, we were discussing what distribution would look like, and these are questions still to be answered.
This question for the governor. It almost seems fitting that with the research that's happening here and the announcement from HHS and DOD that it's happening in a state that is looked at as a model for pushing back COVID-19.
I hope that's right. Scott Gottlieb, who's active here at Pfizer on the board, was also an advisor for the state of Connecticut as we thought about reopening protocols and how we could do that safely. We've had all the scientific leaders trying to convince people how important it is to wear the mask and do the other things that sort of set Connecticut apart and have allowed us to be a pace setter in terms of a low infection rate. And I don't think it's any coincidence that we have a leading bioscience corridor in the United States right here in Connecticut, and Pfizer is an anchor member of that. And that allows us to coordinate our response not just at the academic level, but at the street level as well. And I'd like to think that Connecticut will embrace a vaccine that can make an enormous difference in people's lives.
Hi, good morning. Susan Haig from the Associated Press. I understand this morning there was an announcement that the federal government is going to be paying Pfizer to deliver 100 million doses, and then after that there's potential for 500 million. What needs to happen in order for that second batch? Do you have to prove the efficacy? What happens?
Sure, good question. So for the 100 million to be delivered, these clinical trials need to be safe and show effectiveness. We need regulatory approval on a package. And so that's for really any product. Then you get into the question of what kind of capacity can be brought and how fast. And I think you're referencing the agreement with the U.S. government for 100 million doses this year and then potentially an additional 500 million next year. And hopefully at that point it will be manufacturing excellence, speed of manufacturing, what kind of batch dosing, batch volumes can be produced. And that will be a very large body of work. As you can imagine, that's highly technical. That's actually well beyond my expertise in those areas of manufacturing.
Also, there are 5 potential vaccines right now that are receiving federal funding, I assume. And so how does Pfizer play into all those 5? Like, where do you fit in?
Sure.
How's that going to work?
Yeah, I've lost track of exactly what other companies are doing and who's doing what. Pfizer elected not to receive federal funding for our program. I think the sense was that we wanted to be able to move quickly, have those like fast-track interactions with the regulatory agencies of the U.S. government, but be able to be independent. And as mentioned by the governor, the huge manufacturing that's been done at risk, and we just thought that we would put up the funds, we would take the risk, we would deliver as best we can, and it's been going exceptionally well.
Just a question regarding coronavirus research in the past for previous coronaviruses. Has Pfizer been involved in research and development on past coronaviruses? And if so, did it help in moving forward with this research?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Probably 2 different considerations here. The first being the vaccine. And for that, it was really the mRNA platform that we partnered with BioNTech. So they had the platform. We meaning Pfizer, brought the manufacturing capability, expertise in large clinical trials, et cetera. So those are kind of baked in for that part of the equation. If you're thinking about treating patients who are infected, then this goes back, interestingly, about 20 years to the first SARS that really was confined to a lower number of patients in the middle Southeast Asia. And we had a program at the time in California, and we were able to build on the excellence in chemistry and understanding of the target, and that was entirely applicable to SARS-2, which we call COVID-19. So that was a great head start that we had from the last 20 years ago.
Can you talk more about where Groton fits into the greater network? How many sites like this site are working on this? And will there be increased workforce here to meet this higher demand?
I got all of that except the last part of the question.
Will you be hiring more people here?
Okay, good question. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, really every treatment we discover and develop is worked on by these deep levels of expertise at our various sites. So thank you for picking up on that. We have probably four to five major R&D sites in the U.S. All of them have contributed something to this project, the vaccine project. I mentioned earlier what some of those unique contributions from the Groton site have been, and we just find that it's a really effective way to discover and develop new treatments is these global project team approaches where you can really bring the expertise to the project. And we're all getting pretty skilled now at doing video conferencing, WebEx, et cetera, to make those global project teams work well.
Hiring more people to come in?
Oh, right. I think you'll see some low-level hiring as we have also normal turnover. The vaccine itself has not triggered a demand for that, so it's more that R&D output is really on the upswing from our company. We're doing very well. We're proving to the skeptics that we are actually good at discovering and developing new treatments, and I think with that we can expect to see more funding for R&D. And indeed, we've been seeing that trend in recent years.
Hi, Jody Latina from News 8. Question for American people who are interested in this. How does it work? Is it a series of shots? And do you know how much it might cost?
Okay, good questions. I think we're modeling that the first clinical trials have been a single dose. 3 weeks later, a patient comes back and gets a second dose. And the data that we have so far illustrate a really robust host immune response to that paradigm. So it's probably looking like that's where you would start with 2 doses. We'll have to see how this could be studied in larger populations and see whether that's exactly right. Pricing, I'm just reading the same news probably that you are, that we signed a deal with the U.S. government for 100 million doses for $1.95 billion. So if you do the math on that, that would tell you what the government's paying.
This question probably more for the governor, but of course vaccines are only effective if people take it. Has there been any thought into convincing people to take this, especially given what we've seen with anti-vaccination and some of the vaccination rates with children with other vaccinations?
Yeah, very good question, and get to Jody's question as well. Right now, it looks like the federal government is going to be purchasing the vaccines and making them available at no cost. Same things we had to do with to get people tested. Vaccines only work if people take the vaccines. And you maybe remember it was just a couple months before COVID hit that there were a few people visiting us at the state capitol who were reluctant to take vaccines. So our job is to do everything we can to convince people that it's be done safely, that it's going to be not only effective but safe for each and every one of you. I'll be one of the first people to get that vaccine, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that everybody gets that vaccine as soon as it's available. Sue, I'd just add to your question about the number of, Pfizer's the front runner in this race, and that is great. But there's probably going to be more than one winner, and that's a good thing, too. I mean, one of the things about vaccines in life is not everything is deemed to be totally effective, and some things aren't going to make it through the FDA process. So the more poll horses we have, the better it is. Pfizer's going to be one of them. If there are multiple winners, all the better. That means we can ramp up manufacturing and get more vaccines to more people quicker.
As a follow-up, once the federal government's program is done and paid for, what might you guys price it in the market?
Yeah, I really don't know the answer to that question. What we're really focused on, as you can imagine, is to deliver the studies, deliver the data, do the science, achieve that approval that allows that first 100 million doses to go to the U.S. government. We're pretty focused on that. Other questions?
I'm sorry, Siobhan. One more question regarding the efficacy threshold that you might have to reach in order to make a vaccine viable. Obviously, vaccines are not 100% effective. Do you have sort of a threshold?
That's a great question, certainly a rather technical one, so I'm not able to give you a clear answer on that. But probably what I can give some context is, well, how does someone get to that decision? This is where that fast-track status that the program has with FDA will help us as we see the data coming in, as we see what those numbers look like. It'll put us all in a position to look at that data and see what makes sense. I think we're just learning so much about this virus, so much about the infection. Certain principles probably hold true from prior types of infection. Others will be unique to this. So I think you raise a really good and very complex question. And I think that we'll get to it by the end of the year to know what those answers should be.
This may be out of your wheelhouse, but any indication on who would get priority to get one of these doses once it's made available?
You're correct. That's out of my wheelhouse. I think at around a cup of coffee or at a cocktail, there's a lot of discussion about that. And so I think this will be another place where partnership between private industry and government will be important to get to that type of societal question.
And then lastly, could you just detail what you think will be the biggest challenges for the team here at Groton moving forward as we approach October? What will be happening inside this building?
Sure. I guess rather than to pick lots of things, I think I'll pick one that is maybe readily apparent, more readily apparent is, for example, the mRNA, which is will become the immunizing agent, is delivered in a lipid nanoparticle. And so work is ongoing here about formulating that correctly. It's got to be formulated. It has to be done in a way that can be scaled up. You need purity. You need very much high precision in all of that. And that's just one example of something that really needs to work. Has never been done before that we've delivered a vaccine with that kind of particle. So just a rather highly technical but specific response.
I apologize if this has already been answered before, but is there any indication on how long the immunity would last with the vaccine?
We just do not have that information yet. The data that's been reported was at 28 days, which is 7 days after the second injection, very high antibody titer responses, T cell mediated immune responses also very strong. We've not studied it at later time points. And this gets back to the question from the gentleman to your left, is a number of technical things that we'll need to learn about, work through, have dialogue with the agencies, and see what those answers will be and how that affects the product.
And given questions about, some people saying that they're already perhaps getting a second infection, just generally, can you see longer immunity from a vaccine than you can from just a natural infection?
Yeah, biologically, I don't see how that would happen. Those could be similar, but that's speculation. I really don't know. We'll need to get that experience, and we don't know if this is a two-shot series that is done once in the lifetime of a person. We don't know if the virus will mutate and need a different version of the vaccine annually, as you see with influenza. I think we have still, as a scientific community, we have yet to learn those specifics.
And then just a follow-up to the governor about getting people to take the vaccine. Would you consider making it mandatory for anything, perhaps going to public school or anything where the government can have control?
We haven't made things mandatory yet because people have generally stepped up and done the right thing when we asked them to do, like the mask, for example. But I would say is, John mentioned this has been a partnership, and nothing focuses the mind like a crisis. And this has been a partnership between the academic community and pharma and obviously public affairs and government officials. Look, it's so important that we public folks speak with one voice. And we don't always agree in the legislature, but I'd like to think that over the course of this crisis, we've got amazing legislative representatives behind us here. We've been speaking with one voice on how important it is when it comes to the mask, and eventually when it comes to the vaccine as well. And that's how we're going to be able to get it accomplished.
Governor, just to follow up on the question that came earlier, what's your view on who should be vaccinated first in Connecticut? And do you contemplate either taking some sort of executive or legislative action to basically spell out who goes first?
Journalists of a certain age. No, seriously, I need to talk to the experts is how I've relied along the way. If you want to know my first instincts, I'd probably say essential workers. I'd say essential workers who don't have the luxury of telecommuting but are on the front lines. Infectious workers who could be infected or infect others. I think that would be my priority, but now I'll talk to people smarter than me.
Just a quick question for either of you. In this research and development process, Governor, you mentioned Yale New Haven Hospital. Are there other companies, smaller entities in Connecticut that are part of this R&D process with Pfizer, or is it primarily in-house?
Sure. Well, as you can imagine, there are many components to the vaccine. So, for example, we announced 4 to 6 weeks ago, I lose track of time, a partnership with Corning to produce glassware, vials. Because if you're going to have 100 million, 500 million, 1.2 billion doses, you got to have the vials to put them in. So there's just been many things like that that have been part of getting this manufacturing going. I think your question was a little more about Connecticut, and there's not a lot more I can say about that. I will echo the words of the governor earlier about the vibrancy of the biomedical and R&D community in the state. We are proud members of BioCT, for example, and we're able to help the startups really flourish within the state. So there's a lot of that activity. And just another comment is that Pfizer's been approached by hundreds of small companies with ideas about how to prevent infection, tackle infection, improve outcomes for patients. And we have a team of people diligently assessing all of those. We have really tended to prioritize ones that are nearer term, what could impact this pandemic, rather than what might be useful 2 to 5 years from now. So when you start to apply that filter, those hundreds of opportunities narrow down pretty quickly.
I'm sorry if I missed this before, but I wanted to clarify something you said. You talked about by the third quarter it would be available in the hospital setting?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. I would like to clarify that. So we're talking about several things here. And at that point, I had skipped to talking about an IV treatment for an actively infected patient and beginning clinical trials in the third quarter of this year. So that was about the IV treatment, really just getting started with clinical trials.
So the IV treatment comes first?
So if you go, let's fast forward to 5 years from now, and the world's a different place, and the vaccine is there, and there are very few infections. Okay, that's not where we are. So where we are now is, most people are unvaccinated, most infections go untreated. So this would be a patient is ill, gets a laboratory confirmed diagnosis, requires hospitalization. So then at check-in to the hospital, patient takes the bed, hook up an IV drip, and in would flow this treatment if it works. And you'd look for endpoints such as time in the hospital to be reduced with that treatment. You'd look for survival outcomes to be improved, etc. And so this has a similarity to remdesivir. You've heard about that. So this could be used perhaps in conjunction with remdesivir. At least we will start that way.
And then after that, you go into clinical trials, so it becomes like a regular vaccine.
Yeah, so we would probably, going into 2021, be able to start larger clinical trials with the IV treatment.
And eventually, it won't be an IV?
That's the next generation. We are actively working on that. So an oral treatment, which is further down the road, at least by a year, would be patient. In that perfect world, patient gets a diagnosis. Physician can help the patient determine whether they should start on an oral treatment at home and perhaps not be hospitalized.
Thank you very much.
My apologies. With regard to the components of the vaccine, I'm not sure if that is proprietary information, but we've heard of flu shots that may be egg-free. Are there any components of the vaccine that we would understand as lay people?
Sure, let's take a shot at that. So one of the reasons that we are able to scale up production so quickly is that the principal component of the vaccine, the messenger RNA construct, is made in a laboratory. And then it's made progressively at larger scale in a type of bioreactor. And this differs from needing to grow virus in chicken eggs. You would not get the kind of throughput quickly. We don't have vats of cells that are producing the protein for the virus. It really is the mRNA that we are administering, and that's what's enclosed in the lipid nanoparticle. So it's got this amenability to really scaling up production that goes beyond what could be done if you're looking at a live system, such as a cell or an egg, to produce the vaccine components.
Hi, good morning. We've seen that this virus can have a range of different impacts on people and populations. I wondered if you could talk about how your clinical trials for the vaccine will be taking that into account.
I apologize. I think your mask is making
Can't hear me? Okay.
Maybe try stepping closer to the microphone.
Okay, sorry. So we've seen that this virus has had a range of different impacts on people and populations. Could you talk about how the clinical trials for the vaccine are going to take that into account, the differing impacts of the virus?
Okay, let me read back to you what I think you're asking is the infection can affect different people differently, and probably what you're asking is, well, how do you control for that in a clinical trial to assess the interpatient variability in response? Okay, excellent question. First of all, it's study design, and then it's patient recruitment, and we will have many sites that run those studies, and so we will want to have ethnic and genetic diversity in those patients. We'll want age diversity in the patients, and so if we do all that right, then when we've done the 20 to 30,000 patients, there'll be a robust data set really to look at what factors might drive different outcomes for different patients.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great question.
A follow-up on that, are any Connecticut residents involved in that 20 to 30,000 number of patients who've been recruited?
Yeah. I would say that's a work in progress. We are recruiting sites. We are recruiting investigators. So I'd say watch that space. An interesting thing, this is not internal company data. This is something I think I saw published somewhere, is 107,000 people put their hand up saying they're interested in being in a clinical trial with a vaccine. That is unprecedented to have that level of interest, among people. So we hope that will help to enroll quickly, as well. Yeah.
Let me just say in conclusion, look at how fast Pfizer worked in the last 100 days, and look at what could happen over the next 100 days. I don't want to put out false hope, because 100 days is an eternity in COVID time. But if we continue to hit the metrics we need, we continue to get the FDA approvals, we continue to do this safely, we have a real opportunity that by the end of this year, we're going to be able to go to a CVS or your local pharmacy and get a COVID vaccine just like you get a flu vaccine. And we have an opportunity, thanks to the people here in Pfizer, to get back to our new normal. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Governor behind me, that's fine. But for the first couple of rows, if you could please exit